All right. Well, again, it's good to have the audience with us here. I'm Lou Cerny. I'm a vice president with SEDLAC, and I'd like to welcome you to our session, Agile Material Handling with AGVs. The goal of this session is really to provide an overview of AGV technologies. And, while the AGV technologies have been around as long as I've been part of the supply chain industry, I think it's safe to say that that technology has certainly evolved. And we want to make sure that what we're presenting today gives you some ideas to the options that are available, how to go through those options and make appropriate choices, and understand the benefits they can provide along with justification factors and a case study. As the moderator, I'm going to also be monitoring the chat box for any questions you may have. And I'd like to start by introducing our panelists. So the panelists there are Dan Madigan. Dan is a senior manager of distribution strategy for McCormick and Company. His responsibilities include delivering McCormick's long-term strategic and major capital projects and facility improvements across the US and Canada. Prior to his current role, Dan had positions within the McCormick organization as well as Procter & Gamble. He's a native of Sparks, Maryland, graduated with a degree in chemical engineering from the James Clark School of Engineering, University of Maryland, College Park. Joining him on the panel is Brian Spradlin. And Brian is Vice President of Mobile Automation for Keon Dematic. He joined the company in 2019, and in his role, he oversees the mobile automation solutions development and project execution group in North America, Europe, and China. That group supports the Keon operating units of Dematic, Linde, and Still in their AGV and AMR initiatives. He started his career as a mechanical engineer at Northrop Grumman and later at EVI Technology. And from 26 to 2019, he held various roles in Engineering Inc., beginning as a senior mechanical engineer and ending as general manager for the AGV division. Brian also has a degree from the University of Maryland, but Baltimore County, and a master's degree in project management from Johns Hopkins. And then finally, Andy Kuslow is the AGV account manager for Keon Dematic. He joined Dematic in 2018, and Andy's current responsibilities include building and maintaining client relationships, offering a full spectrum of automated solutions, and he works closely with the Dematic solutions engineers to assure optimum solutions for the client's needs. Previously, he had 17 years in the defense industry, including packaging engineering, system vehicle quality assurance, and shop management, overseeing the build and prototype of military vehicles. He attended the Michigan State University, where he received a bachelor's degree in science and packaging. So I'd like to welcome all of our esteemed panelists here. And as I said earlier, I mean, the whole idea is that AGVs have been around in the industry as long as I have. The difference is that when we first tried to implement AGVs for clients, the challenges were they were typically fixed paths. Many of them had guides in the floor. They were relatively inflexible. And what we've seen over the last, I'll say, 10 to 15 years is a significant change in the capabilities, flexibility, and ultimately, I guess I'll use the word agility of these offerings in terms of AGVs. They also always used to be kind of fixed point-to-point deliveries at common heights. Well, that's no longer the case. I mean, I think it's safe to say that, if you look at a mobile piece of equipment these days, it's not surprising to see that those pieces of equipment can, in fact, be automated. And they can either operate in a kind of a hybrid mode, which is using both the automated as well as manned operation of those vehicles, as well as in a fully autonomous mode. So, certainly the capabilities have increased significantly, and a lot of that has to do with the capabilities of vision systems and just AI in terms of being able to understand the needs and flex with the system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our panel there. And that panel has an interesting backdrop behind them there. They're coming to you live from Dematic's AGV Production Center in Grand Rapids. So with that, I'm going to stop doing the talking and I'm going to turn it over to you, the panel. Take it away. Thank you.
So thanks once again, Lou and SEDLAC team, for inviting us to speak at this conference today. We really appreciate the opportunity to share our story, share the view from our test center here. A lot of activity going on these days, given the current climate, business climate. I'd also like to thank Dan Madigan for joining us today and sharing his unique journey towards automation with us and with all of our guests today that are in the conference. So thanks once again. Just to kind of go over a quick agenda of what we're going to be covering here today. We're going to have Dan speak about McCormick's new DC that they're building outside of Baltimore, Maryland. He'll kind of give you a good overview of the project and where things stand today. We're then going to get into the AGV portion of that project. Kind of give you a general overview of how we started and where we ended up, how we picked the vehicle of choice, which vehicle we picked to execute the application with, and we'll also go over some of the features of the vehicle as well. Lastly, we're going to go over a bit of what's going on here at our facility with Mr. Spradlin, and we'll then field some questions from the audience. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Madigan.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So hopefully everyone can hear me. So just to give you a little bit of overview of McCormick and sort of the unique project that we were able to start going back to 2020, and then we'll feed into really the application of the AGVs. So for McCormick, we're chartering a new site that we're calling our Maryland Logistics Center in Sparrows Point, Maryland. So this is one of the largest capital projects that McCormick's ever executed. And really, we had three key principles and pillars to this project that you'll see that the AGVs kind of weaved into. So first is to increase our space efficiency. So as you see the map over there on the right, that was our current DC network within a 40-mile radius of our corporate headquarters in Hunt Valley. We had several sites that were feeding our manufacturing plants, and then we had 4 main sites that were served as our distribution hub for the Northeast. So with that, we really want to improve our storage density by building a state-of-the-art facility with best-in-class technology. Secondly, is just minimizing the transfers between buildings. We spent easily over $2 million a year in labor just moving stuff between ourselves. One fact I like to share is our manufacturing plants are our #1 supplier to our distribution centers, but our #2 supplier was our own distribution centers to ourselves. So just a lot of inefficiency between the buildings. Second pillar was leveraging technology, right? We wanted new scalable material handling technology to handle all the different parts of our business: pallets, layers, case handling, and kit creation that the end-of-aisle displays that you might see in your local grocery store. And third was enabling growth. We want a facility that delivers 10 plus years of growth with our really aggressive, growth projections as McCormick. Customer word simplification. With all our acquisitions that we've had lately, we're shipping the same customer from multiple different buildings, which makes it more difficult on the customer end. And then third is supporting e-commerce and future acquisitions. So e-commerce is something that we are really not into yet as McCormick. Our goal as a company is to grow and take on more acquisitions. So we want a facility that is built and prepared to deliver those goals. And so from a facility layout, I certainly won't talk through all the technical detail, but it's a very, very large facility of 1.8 million square feet. So to put that in perspective, that's over 31 regulation college or NFL football fields from end to end, and that's about a half-mile long. So with a facility this large, we really wanted to make sure that all of our technology was placed appropriately, and certainly moving a pallet that long of a distance is a huge labor drain, and hence the very obvious need to bring AGVs into our facility.
Excuse me, Dan, but I don't recall that we designed that facility with a football field in the middle of it, did we?
Apologies, I think there might have been a question we couldn't hear.
Ah, okay. That's okay.
Try again, Lou.
I was just suggesting that we did not plan that facility to have a football field in the middle of it as we're seeing here.
Yes, correct. And then, you know, when you look at all the different products, right? So, you know, McCormick is well known as a spice company, but we have a lot of other different brands as well. We're now in the condiments with Frank's Red Hot, Cholula, French's Mustard. And we also have a lot of industrial products that come in 50-pound bags. So when we looked at a technical solution that could support our whole business, you know, we really partnered closely with Andy and the whole Dematic team to understand what are the dimensions, and really what is, you know, our goal is to have one truck that could deliver the wide array of products that McCormick has.
All right, we're going to turn it back to me now. You know, when this project started in the very early, in January of 2019, I recall some vague information coming through SEDLAC about a big project that was going on. And this is no different than any project that I've been a part of in terms of where we start and where we end up, the journey that we follow, the path and the journey that we travel along. Oftentimes in the beginning doesn't look like what it is in the end. But this, you know, roughly what we conceptualized in the beginning, more or less was what happened at the end. But it also, the vehicle of choice changed several times as we talked through different ways of, you know, different ways of skinning the cat, as they say. But really, what flowed best here, and as Dan mentioned, it's a half-a-mile long building, long runs. There's no value added with your personnel on forklifts, just moving that product from point A to point B. So that's really where the focus was. You know, that facility has very narrow aisle racking, pushback rack, you name it, they've got a mix of everything in there. And Dematic has solutions in vehicles that can handle all of those types of applications, but we were really honing in on the long distance transport. So really what we focused on was staging product for the AGV system, then transporting that product. And how we transported that was, you know, interesting in terms of, you know, carrying a single load, looking at side-by-side carry with a certain type of vehicle, or stacking product and taking a stack. So we had a lot of choices and a lot of, you know, different applications, if you will, that we talked through and you know, spent a lot of time discussing. But ultimately it was taking it from an inbound staging area, transporting it over a long run, getting it close to the racking, dropping it at end of aisle, where they have McCormick personnel on lifts that are going to take it and put it away into racking. They're also going to retrieve that product and bring it down to a staging area for the AGVs to then pick up and move to an outbound staging area. So that was the original concept, but you know, it changed. There's fluidity with where we were dropping the product and picking it up from. But you know, our original concept proved to be the best one. So,
You know, that's not uncommon for anyone looking to go into this type of activity. Choosing a partner early is incredibly important, and choosing the right partner, someone who has experience with a lot of these applications. It's not uncommon that the end solution isn't exactly like where you started out. So don't get frustrated when that happens to you. It's all part of the process.
a part of the journey. From an operational flow, we started this early on. This is the high level analysis that we do, that I perform prior to getting solution development engineers involved. So we work with the client and try to understand the needs and what might flow best. And this was working in partnership at the time with SEDLAC about finding the right mix of where the product was supposed to be designated, where the designation of the product was going to be. We found that it seemed to make more sense to put the majority of the product, I'll say on the left-hand side where we're seeing 75% of the product going. But, we just identified main areas to take that product to and pick up product from. And then once we got solution development engineering involved, we get into the fine details of really developing guide path and certain pick and drop positions for the system.
And I'll just add real quick is, back to Brian's point about partnering early on, right? We're doing all this before a building was even created, right? No foundations had been poured. So, that input allowed us to create the right, door widths and aisle lengths and everything that, could work really well with the AGV solution to, just maximize throughput.
And so what you're seeing here, this is just a lot of the detailed work that gets done and developed once we get our solution development engineers involved. What you're seeing there are vehicle sweeps. An AGV has safety zones that project, virtual safety zones that project in front and behind the vehicle via laser sensors. So what you're kind of seeing is we call it the array. So as the vehicle goes and makes a turn, it's right. What you're seeing is I guess the forecasting or the portrayal of the virtual safety zones. And this allows us, as we look at spacing, aisle widths and spacing that might be required if we're going to actually get interference with racking or any other bollard or whatnot. So this is a lot of the detailed work that gets involved. Oftentimes, we might see an obstruction. We have to make tweaks to where our guide paths are at. This is really getting into the detailed work. So.
Yeah, and on that note, we talk a lot about, you mentioned safety, and I'm glad you brought that up. Often in AGVs, and automation in general, we're about ROIs. We know how important that is clearly. Safety shouldn't be overlooked either with AGVs. It typically provides a nice increase in safety, removes any of the unknowns, essentially. AGVs are extremely predictable in how they handle every situation. And that's just another benefit to system.
One other important aspect of the solution development is recommending a fleet size for a customer. Really, the main points or the main data that we need to recommend an AGV fleet size are the quantity of pallets, usually it's pallets, but product moved per hour, usually in a palletized form, and the distances that we need to move that product. Oftentimes we're working with the client, so we figure that out on our own, but the input of how often we need to move product an hour is very key to sizing a system. And that's really what we're illustrating here. In McCormick's case, our first recommended vehicle quantity came out to be trucks.
Okay.
And,
I'm going to go.
oftentimes
What I'm doing for people is go to the technical support.
The quantity of pallets moved obviously might go up, so we can adjust the fleet size. That's where the flexibility with an AGV system comes in. As your forecast changes, you can easily add trucks to a system to accommodate that additional rate. I went ahead of slide. Okay, so ultimately, what you're seeing on this slide, this is the vehicle of choice for the McCormick project. As I mentioned earlier, we went through several iterations and design ideas that brought different vehicle variants into the mix. But ultimately, we decided on the FMX20 model. It's what we call a hybrid, where in theory, you can put a person on there, or we have an automated package that we put on the vehicle and it runs as an AGV. This particular vehicle provided a lot of flexibility as we can go up close to 30 feet in height for pallet put away. That was something that, as mentioned, the journey that we go along, pallet put away was never necessarily a main theme of the project, but as additional components came on or additional automation, McCormick found the need to assist that application with AGV or augmented. So that kind of helped drive us into this vehicle choice. Like I said, provides a lot of flexibility. Ultimately, what we decided on was also carrying stacks of product for horizontal transport. This is also this vehicle also is going to interface with the entry system, taking pallets and putting them away and racking, as I said, close to 30 feet in the air. So there's a lot of flexibility with the vehicle, and that's something that McCormick really valued. So making it a reality.
And Andy mentioned the term hybrid. We use a couple of different terms when we look at this style of AGV. Sometimes you might hear us call it series or sometimes a hybrid truck. And what it really means, it's a truck that begins life as a manual truck. And from our ITS factories, Keon Group owns the Linde and Stihl brands and all the factories therein, in addition to the bespoke custom AGVs made by Dematic. These hybrid or series AGVs begin life as a manual truck and are converted at the end of the line to an AGV. What we're moving towards is, in fact, and we already have now, new trucks that are built directly on the lines as AGVs. So our industrial truck factories are building AGVs coming off the line that way. And we're going to see more and more of that. On the other hand, we also have what you see behind us here. If you see some white vehicles running behind us, are the bespoke AGVs that are custom built as AGVs and don't have that manual option to run. One of the questions we get a lot is, oh, can I just buy the manual truck and convert it later? That's rarely a good way to go for a lot of reasons. So we get that a lot, but it typically doesn't work out. And that's because there's a fair amount of changes that need to be made to the vehicle to make it an AGV versus the manual truck. And you really don't want to put a vehicle into service for a long time and then say, okay, now I want to try to convert it to an AGV. As a machine wears, it becomes more difficult to then convert it to an automated style of operation. So while it's a tempting one, if you're talking about doing it for a few weeks, sure, that could be something we could talk about. But if you're talking about buying it and then a couple of years later converting it over to an AGV, that rarely turns out to be a good path.
And then I'll just add from a McCormick perspective, and we said the word flexibility about 10 times, but that was probably, flexibility was truly the driver for the solution we chose. This is our first foray into AGVs. We wanted something that, a technician can jump on if, something was going wrong with the AGV, or we have flexibility in our workforce or the growth of our business. One of the great pieces of working with, Dematic and the larger Keon Group is their partnership with these other brands. So, we're partnering with them for one of our projects in Europe. And we have an automation strategy, really a phase 2 and a phase 3 to introduce possibly AGVs into other parts of our operation in the future as McCormick as a whole continues this automation journey, right? So we're considering doing trailer unloading in the future. We need to work on doing trailer loading from the plant before we can do that at our DC. But it feels really good to go with a company like Dematic that can really meet all of our current needs, but the future needs as well, as we intend to go.
Now that's absolutely right, and I appreciate that foresight that you had. It means a lot. We have a lot of solutions, and it's important to think long term. Usually, AGVs are very often the start of an automation journey for a customer, but things are going to change. Going with a partner that can bring as many solutions to the table as possible means those are going to play together versus trying to glue different pieces together as you grow. So thinking through it and choosing a partner that has a lot of flexibility will help you out. And here are a few images that you see again behind us. The difference between on the upper left, you see some of these hybrid or series AGVs, usually these industrial trucks that are turning into AGVs real time. And then in the other pictures, you can see the bespoke or white AGVs built here in Dematic and being built right behind us and tested. So here in our Grand Rapids facility in Michigan is where we build the majority of our white AGVs, or all of the white AGVs in North America, that is. And we just recently moved here, middle of last year. We had, prior to this, been producing these in our Holland, but due to scale, we moved into a building that we owned here in Grand Rapids and provides us huge scale. And for those of us who know us, we've more than doubled our HV production and are doubling it again here in the near term. And the space here in Grand Rapids has allowed us to do that, not only for the assembly, but for the testing. We put our AGVs through significant reliability and functional testing beyond what you would say testing on a fork truck too. So we can ensure that when they come on site, we have as low risk as possible with the integration on site. So again, we're not going to walk through the factory today, but with the pictures and maybe with some of the AGVs running behind us here, you can see what we're all about here in Grand Rapids.
Dematic has a rich history in AGVs, and we've been building them in North America for a long time. We're very excited to have our AGV manufacturing located now within the same facility as our America headquarters. It allows for a lot of commonality and just synergies between multiple groups.
AGV is an automatic guided vehicle, and it's basically an unmanned forklift.
Some of the benefits that our customers get with AGVs is consistent movement of products, repeatability, less damage to their products in a warehouse, and improved throughput for their systems. We've seen a pretty substantial increase in the demand for AGVs. Mostly our customers continue to struggle to staff their warehouses.
Our customers are massive customers, and these are amazing machines, and so to have a voice in that is what really makes it exciting to come to work every day. You can see the fruition of your work.
Our biggest strength comes with Kion. We are now a global AGV vendor, meaning we have regional solutions. However, we have the pool across the entire globe to supply us alternate solutions for any customer needs that we could come up with.
There's a quicker turnaround in a Dematic AGV. We fully test the vehicle here in Grand Rapids so that when that vehicle delivers to site, it's more of a plug and play option if it's an existing site.
Our test track is very busy. We'll have upwards of 20 vehicles on the track at a time, and we're growing this track.
This is testing every feature that a particular fleet is going to do at a customer's site, and ensures that every vehicle is going to perform the same way when it gets to the site.
It's kind of an orchestra. These vehicles, they talk to each other. The software behind them is pretty amazing in how it's mapped, and almost like a synchronized swimming, if you will. When you watch it, they know exactly when to stop, when to turn, which priorities are most important. It's pretty cool.
As the technology as a whole continues to increase, our capabilities to do more and more continues to expand. That gives us more and more market opportunities, and it does require quite a bit of invention to hit those spots.
It's continuous improvement. We're constantly going after making things better. That's what keeps me driven.
Everybody here is focused on the customer requirements, safety, productivity, and ergonomics. Our team, again, is everything. A fabulous team.
What's exciting to me is that Dematic continues to innovate and continues to be a leader in the material handling industry.
This is the innovation spot for Dematic and Kion as a whole.
The way the numbers are moving up, production quantities are going up, the opportunities are there to just keep getting better and better and better.
But my favorite part about that video is the fact that it shows a lot of the people here in Grand Rapids doing the work. These things don't just roll off the line. They're built by people who actually care deeply about what they're doing and want these things to be perfect when they need to be perfect when they show up at your site. So that's what I really like. It involves a lot of.
So I think at this point, first of all, it's safe to say that it's exciting, Dan, to, I'm sure, be able to actually see the equipment that ultimately is going to be part of your operation there in Maryland. Initial thoughts as you've seen it run through its paces there. How's it feel?
It feels great. So yeah, I mean, first thing we got in when we got in this morning was they took me over. So our vehicles are here. They're being assembled, and the automation packages are going on as we speak. So yeah, it feels really good. We're preparing for the FAT. We've got our product here, but even from the last time that I visited Dematic a few months ago to the site here today in Grand Rapids, it's extremely impressive what they've done, and feels really good to see the progress continue.
So when we did start the project design, probably 24 months ago, give or take, I'm not sure that necessarily in any of our team's minds that AGVs was going to be a leading part of the solution set there. But I think it's safe to say that with all the challenges that people are seeing and facing in the supply chain, this is just another example of how do you keep that agility, I guess, right? How do you maintain it? How do you assure customer service ultimately, right? Okay.
Life cycle support. Comment about life cycle support.
Yeah, that's excuse me. That's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on here at Dematic is the support that we can provide after install. We're second to none in that arena. We have over 700 technicians that handle all of our automation capabilities on a customer service basis. We have strategic centers throughout North America, with technicians at these centers that can quickly deploy to customer sites. We also have a very robust remote support network as well. We have one that's here in Grand Rapids specifically for all of our automation equipment, but we have one in Holland, Michigan that is unique just to AGVs. So we have our own support network with that remotely. And at the end of the day, we pride ourselves on making your system right and not leaving you until it's right. So that's we're second to none.
Okay, so obviously in the case of McCormick, it is a new installation. So as we look for those members of the audience who potentially have an existing operation, what should their considerations be, as they're looking at it and saying, are AGVs for me? And, how do I know what type of AGV? What's the, what advice would you give them?
New versus. I think the question was how to apply AGV technology.
And new versus brownfield.
Obviously, the most optimal situation is when we have a greenfield site. It's because Dan had mentioned it. As we laid out guide path, and there may be an obstruction here or there. A support column might be not in the best place. In a greenfield situation, you got the ability typically to move some things to make it more optimal for AGV flow. Brownfields are a little more challenging in that regard because it's equipment is fixed. Support columns are fixed. We've got the ability to move around, but we have to find the right vehicle choice in a brownfield application. We've got what we call a compact line that has the ability to fit in some more tighter spots. But really aisle spacing is very critical for the AGVs. We don't want to create bottlenecks. We really want two-way traffic as much as possible to allow flexibility of the system. So those are some of those considerations. Greenfields are great. Brownfields a little challenging, but it's not insurmountable. So.
Yeah, I think you mentioned aisle width is a big one. Load consistency is a really big one too. If you've got a lot of loads where you've got shrink wrap hanging off, and AGVs are despite exactly what they look, they're not exactly driverless forklifts. They're not the same thing. It turns out the human brain is really good at making fast decisions, and AGVs like things to be predictable and consistent. And so the rest of the operation has to be built around that as well. So you have to look at the load consistency is a really big one. AGVs can handle a lot. You saw some pictures of loads. Those things weren't exact, right? But they were packaged nicely. There was nothing overhanging. Pallets were in good shape. That's a lot of things that the AGVs require to run in a consistent way. So that's another big one. And one of the best things is if it's a brownfield or greenfield, we mentioned earlier, getting someone who knows in there to have a look with you, do a site visit, run through it. People like Andy who go do this inside and out every day, they know what to look for. They see this and they can spot right away, hey, this is good. This is going to be a challenge, but we might be able to overcome it. So that's one of the best advice. Get someone who really knows on site.
Okay, and like anything, it's a partnership. You have to have the client, you have to have hopefully a consultant involved if possible, as well as the vendor community. I mean, it's really working together to start to take a look at what does that long-term plan look like, right? I mean, it's one of those cases where the good news is there's 1,001 choices out there, and there's more coming on every day. The bad news is there's 1,001 choices out there, and how do you know what is the right choice to actually go forward with? So certainly those types of partnerships, as you mentioned, are critical to that. So if we're looking at AGVs, it used to be, again, it was kind of that point-to-point single level. What we're seeing now, I think for the most part, is it's more and more kind of the forked type of vehicles where you can lift and change elevations. Is that the trend that you're generally seeing in the marketplace?
So is the trend more, it's been floor to floor transfer, but we see floor to elevation. Get some comments on that, on those trends.
I think honestly, every side of it is growing, is the truth of it that I've seen.
Yeah.
We do see floor to shelving and different racking. We mentioned McCormick having several different types, right? We've seen a lot of that as the need for automation has just really increased. We do see a lot of ground-to-ground transport stands, we call the tunneling style, the ground transport style AGVs are only going up. Those are used heavily and only increasing. We see the AMRs that we offer as well that are growing dramatically. They're also more that ground level transport. So really, I don't know that any one is exploding on top of another. We really just see that the industry as a whole is requiring growing.
And I'll just add, I find, things tend to go in trends for me. I'll get a bunch of inquiries about trailer loading all at once, seemingly out of nowhere. Other times I've had inquiries about conveyor deck vehicles all at once. No rhyme or reason, but it's just interesting that I find that they tend to bubble and cluster together a lot of times. But to the point, it kind of spans. Everyone's needs are a little different, and we do have a lot of solutions that can help, a wide range of customers. So,
Okay, and lead times. So if someone's looking to bring, AGVs into their operation, we heard earlier from an AMR perspective, maybe 3 to 4 months. I have a feeling we're talking a little bit different when it comes to the AGVs. What should they be thinking about in terms of planning? Is it too late for peak, I guess, is the question.
You comment about lead time.
Lead time. Well, like everyone, we're not immune to, even though we're in supply chain, we're not immune to supply chain challenges, right? So we've seen these lead times increase, and that's a reality the whole world's been dealing with. We are not immune to it. The base trucks, for example, coming out of the ITS factories, even have increased lead time a little bit over the last year. The key components, a lot of the safety components, some drives, these electrical PCs that are built into these AGVs, we've seen the lead times go way up. We're managing that. I hate to say it depends, but what I would use to probably tell you is something in the 6 to 9 month range for an AGV system of a reasonable size. If it's a really big one, it could be longer. I think we're in that 9 to 12 range now with some of the lead time and the challenges that we're seeing. One of the things we recommend, as soon as you can narrow down and lock in the vehicle type, it's a really great idea to get the vehicles on order, even if you're still working out some of the site details, because that's the long tent in the pole. I thought I'm pulling the tent. And that really helps you to get ahead of that. Then you can finalize some of the site details and get your engineering going. If you get those vehicles on order and you're confident, that helps a lot.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, we're getting close to running out of time here. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for your insights here. And any final closing comments that you'd like to leave with the audience in terms of the topic?
Closing comments.
From my side, just a big thank you to everyone who's attended. Big thank you to McCormick for having us and for the great partnership we've experienced on this journey together.
Yeah, same here. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to you and the SEDLAC team, and really to the Dematic team as well. It's really gone exceedingly well thus far in our AGV journey, in big part because of the full Dematic team, from sale all the way through engineering to now. So big thank you.
And thank you from me. And just want to point out, prospective customers, we always welcome tours of our facility, our test track, to get you to understand the scale of what we do and what we offer. So, if there's ever, if you have, an interest, feel free to reach out. You can get our contact information through Lou, and we'd be happy to have a discussion with you. So thank you.
All right, again, gentlemen, thank you so much. Enjoy watching those vehicles run behind you. We'll see you now. Have a good day.
You know,
Thank you, guys.